Welcome to Go to Market, a podcast for RevOps sales and marketing leaders to dive deep into industry insights and best practices. Go to Market is sponsored by Fullcast and Silicon Slopes. It is my absolute pleasure today to introduce Dr. April Larson. She is the medical director for the Division of Dermatopathology at Sonic Healthcare. She is the co-founder of PathologyWatch. She is a board-certified dermatologist, and she is one of my best friends. I am so happy you're here, April. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Amy. It's super
It is
exciting.
so much fun to have you here. I've been so excited to have you on the podcast and talk about everything that you've been doing to integrate technology and healthcare and bring some really complex problems, some solutions with digital at derm and everything else you're doing. So first, April, give us a little bit about your background.
So I've been a dermatologist for several years. I spent 20 plus years in private practice in dermatology. And so that was my first love, my hobby. Love working with patients. And my dad was a plastic surgeon. My brother's a plastic surgeon. And so that was really so enjoyable to me to create relationships with people. And I think that brought a skill set that was important to Pathology Watch. And then this opportunity fell in my lap to become involved with a startup, a healthcare tech startup called PathologyWatch. It was a technology startup in the dermatology space. And so it, lended itself well to my skill set. And before this, I didn't really have a sales or business background at all. So my husband is the business guy. He's an anesthesiologist as well, but he was a business major. And so he's done all kinds of small businesses. We opened a restaurant together and lots of other businesses. So I've just kind of observed and been a part of that with him along the way. And then, moved on to Pathology Watch. So at Pathology Watch, we picked a really difficult problem to solve. And it was important to me because I had used electronic medical records my whole career. And most of them were very clunky and, not helpful. But, I believed that was the future. And I always used them. And, as a physician, you just learn to work around things, kind of make it work for you. But when I got exposed to Pathology Watch, that was my big question. Like, why is this true that software is so cumbersome in healthcare? Everywhere else, we're using really effective tools. And so my question was, why is that? And can I influence the development of user-friendly software in my field? So that was, really the huge growth period for me. I was involved in every part of the business there and was just the experience of a lifetime. So
Oh, absolutely. So, April, just for all of our listeners, you were in practice for 20 years. You get approached by one of the co-founders of Pathology Watch, who is a dermatopathologist, who happened to be my brother, who was in your neighborhood and said, April, I've got this crazy idea. I'm here with one of the best AI people in the world, Dan Lambert, and we want you to be part of this. And we need an expert in dermatology to help us integrate digital into a very, like, I don't want to say backwards, but kind of like a very traditional system, pathology, right? So then I was also part of this. Greg, my brother, got both of us involved, which is amazing. And so then what we did, right, was we took slides, cancer slides, when somebody would do like a biopsy, and then they would put it on a slide, and then they would turn it around, and they would send it over to a dermatopathologist. So basically the flow is like, you take a look at somebody's mole. You see that it's got cancer, maybe. You're like, let's biopsy this. Let's put it on a slide. Let's send it over to Greg through the mail across the country because he's the best. He's at Harvard and he's working as a dermatopathology fellow. And then let's have him turn it back around and see if it has cancer. And that takes anywhere from, I don't know, it could be 2-3 days up to 2-3 weeks. Is that right?
that's right. So
Okay.
especially when you're using a, specialist in the field. So you have, a dermatopathologist who already is a specialist, but then you have a subspecialist within that field who, focuses on pigmented lesions, for instance. Those can take a lot longer to get that information back.
Yeah. So turnaround time was one of the problems that we solved. by digitizing those slides, it was available for instant access to people all across the world. It was also available for, direct upload into the electronic medical record with the
Report.
interpretation
Yes.
report, right, from the dermatopathologist. So Greg puts in his interpretation of what he's just read on the digital slide, and then you get to read it and be like, "Okay, I think that's right."
And dermatology is very unique in the fact that part of what dermatologists train in is with the pathology, right? Because there is such variety on the skin. You can see so many different things. And so part of how we train is we see the clinical presentation, but we also look at the slides, and dermatologists are actually able to read and diagnose on their own slides, much like, the orthopedic surgeon reads their own x-rays. The dermatologist also can look at the slides. And so, in practice, after we graduate from our training, they encourage us to look at the pathology slide, even if
Mhm,
someone else is actually rendering the diagnosis. And so, that was what for me was not very practical, because I was in kind of a, more not rural, but a smaller city, and there was no dermatopathologist there. And so, in order to have a specialist, I would send my slides to Salt Lake City. And
mhm,
so they would get the skin biopsy, they would process it, create the slide, and then they would send me down a copy, a slide to review myself. But oftentimes, by the time I would get that slide, I had already given results to the patient. I had already made my plan, and so, is mostly just using that report to do
mhm,
that. But there's so much more information when you're looking at the slide, when you have the context of the actual pathology. And so that was the piece that was, missing for me.
mhm,
And when I heard about this concept with Greg, I thought it was just so important to dermatologists to improve this. And also, it's one of those specialties where for the dermatopathologist also the clinical presentation is so critical. So
mhm.
critical for the dermatopathologist to really understand what the dermatologist is seeing, see
Yeah.
their clinical photos. And so, again, you're able to create this user interface that both helps the dermatologist see the presentation that the pathologist sees. You could actually look at it in real time and discuss
Mhm,
the case with the pathologist, and also providing very easy access to the clinical images for the pathologist, clinical history, in a similar in one system,
mhm.
which was really unique in the pathology field. So lots of elements of this, concept or product, I think that was really revolutionizing the field.
It 100% did, and what was one of the things that I remember so well was the first time I had the chance to talk with you. Greg says, "Hey, Amy, you need to talk with our brilliant medical director, April. She's our co-founder, and she's going to tell you what you need to know so we can start marketing it." Because I was the marketing person. I was like, "Okay, I'm in. This is awesome." And I remember calling you up and just being like 100% just like so blown away. I was like, "Oh my gosh, I know nothing about this field, and this woman is the smartest and most incredible woman I've ever met." So anyway, I like the first meeting, I just remember like you talking about like the lab information system and trying to explain that to me, and me just going like, "Oh."
I wouldn't have known, Amy. You took it all in.
You're so sweet. So anyway, that was such an amazing adventure. We just linked arms and just went to battle in the market. One of my favorite things about working with you also is your understanding of brand. And as a marketer, obviously, putting you as the face of the brand was so incredibly important because you are the exact, ICP that we are going after. So then we were acquired by Sonic, and this presented another amazing opportunity to be able to get this software onto a global scale, right? And I want to talk about this for a little bit because you have had the opportunity to go into each one of these labs at Sonic Healthcare and do a full digital transformation with them. And you did multiple labs all at once. Can you describe what that was like and, like, some of the learnings that you've had?
It was really, such a growth period also. So, it's very different from what we did at PathologyWatch, because at PathologyWatch, The unique part was we started as digital. And so, it was a great opportunity. That's what made us unique because we were, working with this cross-trained, cross-functional team. So the physicians were working with the developers, were working with the lab personnel, developing this product in real time, taking real feedback, creating real features
Mm.
based on that feedback, and just this really intimate, collaborative experience at Pathology Watch was amazing. And then, we take that into this transformation into healthcare. And I will be honest, I definitely, was not prepared for how difficult that would be. And I've heard it said since that in healthcare, bringing a product to market in healthcare is 20% the product, which in your mind, you're thinking that's the whole thing, right?
That's the thing, yeah. Mhm.
And then I got introduced to the concept of change management. So 80% of the rest, the rest of the success of this is change management, which is, integration, alignment, adoption, and reimbursement. And so really the product itself is really only 20%. So product fit is really a smaller part of what makes a product successful when you take it to go to market or when you bring it to a healthcare system. And so that was really a great experience, but very challenging and one that I definitely underestimated.
The digital transformation success rate is fairly low, and you were able to do it successfully. What were some of the learnings that you had as you were going through saying, how do I change this system where everyone is used to just processing glass slides and get them to really understand what it's like to go digital and to use the digital interface and to process it this way? What are some of the tips and tricks that you have for other people who are either in healthcare or even in other industries trying to get good adoption and best practices for transformation?
So, it was a really interesting process, but actually very applicable to go to market
Mhm,
because what we did was we took kind of the knowledge and the experience that we had in, communicating the benefits of the products to clients and
mm,
also to, new dermatopathologists that came to read or other developers that came in as part of the product. We used the skills that we had developed there as an internal sale. We
mhm,
knew that we had the buy-in of the people who came in to purchase, right, and
mhm,
made the decision to buy this product, but the users were not part of that decision really, right? And
mhm,
so we kind of consider these people clients, right? The physicians who are the gatekeepers, they cannot be slowed down, they cannot have a lot of disruption to their workflow. They're already, so busy and overworked and they're just trying to like get home to their family, right? And to
right?
add in anything that's going to slow that down, they're not happy about. They're not happy about anything that's going to kind of like change their flow. We understood that because we had a white glove service, with dermatology clients because dermatologists are very fast at seeing patients,
Mm,
very efficient. And so, again, we knew we couldn't disrupt their workflows. And that was a process that we took there. So we knew, we would have to work with physicians and lab personnel and, leadership within the smaller organization and get people's buy-in, right, to be able to put this product to market inside the organization.
mhm.
We weren't selling to anybody outside the organization. This was really just scale inside a much larger organization. And so I think
Yeah.
that all of those skills were helpful to me. And so all the things that you taught me about go to market, which was so fun, I enjoyed working with you so much and just learned so much about that process. We could take that in and say to the internal client, the physician, and think in our minds, what is your problem? And let us show you how we can solve that. And so I think that that was an approach we took early on. So for example, there were just really practical things that happened. One of the pathologists moved from Massachusetts to Texas. And so all of a sudden, digital pathology becomes important to that practice to keep continuity with the dermatopathologist that was part of that practice and knew those clients. And so then that became a practical application for them to be able to provide slides, not have to ship, be able to have much better turnaround time if you have digital versus glass.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Um,
It's interesting because that internal sale, that is one of the areas that I've had to learn over time. It didn't come naturally to me. I thought, okay, when I was like running an agency back in the day, I thought, all right, well, I've got the buy-in of the CEO. CEO, I'm coming in and they're asking me to do this. All of a sudden you encounter so much resistance naturally, I think, because you've got
Yeah.
people who are like, number one, who is this person? Second of all, are they going to make my job harder? Third of
Yes.
all, are they going to take my job? Fourth of
Yes.
all, what kind of tools do I have to use? And so I really underestimated how important that internal sale was. And I think you did a phenomenal job of it. I think that across thousands of employees, you were able to very quickly establish your authority, move quickly. So they knew that it was going to be a very short-term disruption and train them really well on what the benefits are going to be. So I think you just really did a nice job on that internal sale.
And I think it really comes down to caring about people. So, I mean, I took a lot of my, patient care skills to those people. I really genuinely cared because I'm a physician. I understand what that's like, to
Mhm,
have so much to do in such short time. And so I valued their time. I valued their concerns and their questions. And I could say to them, I hear you. And I promise I'm gonna get this done for you. I'm going to make sure that we listen to you and that this is going to be better for you in the long run and actually
mhm,
in the short run as well. And
mhm,
once I think we had that experience a few times and that you develop that trust with people and they see that you're willing to work hard for them and hear them and make changes even based on their feedback, then that really comes a long way, especially with physicians. That understanding physician to physician was really
mhm.
valuable there and kind of like would translate through
I
the
agree.
organization.
What would you say to people when, and this is very applicable to the AI discussion right now that everyone's going through. I know that there were a few physicians who were worried that when Pathology Watch was coming in, it was going to take their jobs. What did you say to them to make them understand that the technology was there to enable them, but they were still the most important people there, and it was just as a service rather than a replacement?
Amy, that's a really great question, actually, and one that I've encountered a lot, even as we marketed and explained the product to people. That technology, that assist, right, diagnostic assist tool is not better than the physician at this point. Maybe in the future that will happen over time, but right now it really is not smarter, right? And there's a lot of things that it excludes. And so when you, as a physician, know your own limitations, and you say, "Oh my gosh, here's this tool," that in your mind you're thinking it's going to be 100%, right? And you know that you can't be 100%. You think, "Oh, it's gonna be better," right? And we just had to educate them to say, "This diagnostic tool has limitations as well," and help them understand what those limitations are and that they are actually assisting them to move more quickly, but it's not replacing, it's really to make them more efficient, and that was a real, kind of shift in people's minds, and when they then use it and they get the training on it, then they start to understand it. So I think as a developer, you understand the limitations of your tool. When you haven't used those tools, you don't understand the limitations, and
That
so
is so
feedback
true.
is a little.
I encounter that all the time with people who are like, "Well, just AI that. Why do we need marketing? It just does AI. It just does it," you know? And whether it's, an automation tool or an AI tool or whatever, and it is so interesting and kind of a little bit offensive when I'm like, "You guys, you can't replace marketing. Market we deserve jobs," you know? And so it is that's such good feedback on your from you on like how to make people feel more comfortable about this whole thing. So, just kind of as a final question for this particular piece of this, what are a couple of things that you would tell people if they're encountering that situation where someone's kind of nervous about a new technology that you're bringing to them? What are some things you might say to put them at ease or explain to them?
I think a lot of it is really just listening to their concern and understanding first, what is their concern? Is it that it's going to slow them down, which is very common in healthcare? Is it that, they have these kind of more existential fears that it's going to, replace them? And so a lot of it is just listening and understanding what they're concerned about, and then, providing real answers and real, experience on these things. And I think that, again, it's easier physician to physician because I share those experiences. I understand the feelings that they have, and I've had those same things. I've had those same, misunderstandings before I was in this field and exposed to these things. And so they're actually very easy things for me to answer because I experienced those same questions and those same, issues as I was coming into the field.
Oh, that's such great, valuable advice. So, for everyone listening, a couple takeaways that I would say would be like number one, understand your buyer, understand the person that you're going to be working with. If it's an internal sale or an external sale, like that's so nice that it came naturally for you because you are them. And that's why it's easier for me to sell marketing tools because I am them. I know the problems that are happening, right?
Yeah.
And then the second thing that I heard you say was listen, just listen. And then you can address pretty much anything. And I think that that's a really awesome, like, thing that we don't do enough, quite honestly. So
It's a shared experience, I think, and, at the end of the day, when you can center on your vision and what you're really trying to accomplish, if they feel like you have that same vision and that same goal also, it makes it a lot easier, when you're very aligned in what you're trying to accomplish together.
I really love that shared vision rather than one person saying, I'm going to implement this for you. You say, we are doing this together. We're on a journey together, and this is our shared goal. That is another excellent point to bring up that will help me in the future as I do this. Well, April, you are clearly at the top of your game. I am so like proud to be your friend, and I'm so grateful to be your colleague. And it's just been such an amazing and wonderful journey together. How do you stay at the top of your game? This is my last question.
Honestly, the reason why I am this way is because of all of these people around me. And I think that I'm a growth person and I like to learn what other people are doing, kind of understand that on a deep level. And so much of my growth comes from interacting with people like you and observing how you do it and saying, I really admire that. I really like that. There's some things I can't mimic, but I'm going to pick up and, kind of pull that into, how I do things or how I view things. I think also one thing that helps me is I tend to, because of that, look at lots of things and I have to really try to focus myself down. And so one of the ways that we stay focused, I love the book Winning the Week because, I'm someone who has 50 different things that I want to accomplish. And for some reason, it's really hard for me to, realistically look at my time and
Yeah.
say, what can I get done? And so that was really helpful to me to say, what is the one thing this week that's the most important thing to get done? There are these other things that I could get done as well, but really, what is the one thing that's going to move things forward? And I think that that really helped me focus in on, what would make us most successful. That's a really helpful thing that I do kind of in practice a lot. So
I
learning
love
from people around me and then really trying to focus on the things that will, move the project forward.
would move the project forward the best. I think it's so easy to get distracted, and that is something that I do too because I'm kind of a perfectionist, and it really bothers me for to leave things unfinished, even if they're like priority D. And so sometimes I'm like, I've got to do every single one of these priorities, and then just as we get older, and there is no time, you just have to focus on what is the main thing today, and it is such a challenge, so I think that's amazing that you've been able to do that, and I'm on that journey trying to figure it out too. Ah, well, April, thank you so much for joining me on this podcast. It's such a pleasure to have you on and to learn from you, and thank you again for everything you're doing to help make healthcare accessible and affordable and increase the patient outcomes that we have every day.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Amy. Really enjoyed being here.